Do you know what's interesting about people who have extremely high IQ? They never look the way we think they do. Let's imagine a very confident person, someone who always has the right answer, whose words people listen to carefully. But psychology research tells us something completely different. The most intelligent people often sit quietly in the corner of the room. They ask more questions than they give answers, and sometimes they themselves seem uncertain. So what is actually going on inside the mind of an extremely high IQ person? What does psychology tell us about how these people think, how they feel, and how they experience the world differently? Today we will talk about some psychological truths that are consistently found in these people, and some things will truly surprise you. Truth number 1. Their brain never truly rests. Most people can watch a movie, enjoy it, and move on. A person with an extremely high IQ watches the same movie and their brain automatically starts analyzing the director's choices, the psychological motivations of each character, the symbolic meaning behind certain scenes. They didn't choose to do this, it just happens. Neuroscientists call this default mode network activity. Even during rest, the brains of highly intelligent individuals remain unusually active. They are connecting patterns, revisiting past conversations, imagining future scenarios. This is why many high IQ individuals report that their brain feels like it never fully switches off. It's not a choice, it's simply how their cognitive system operates. And while this sounds impressive, it comes with a real cost. Constant mental activity often leads to mental fatigue, difficulty sleeping, and sometimes a feeling of being overwhelmed by your own thoughts. Intelligence in this way is not always a gift. Sometimes it feels more like a machine that cannot find its off switch. Truth number 2. They struggle more with anxiety than most people expect. This one surprises people. We assume that intelligence protects you from worry, that if you're smart enough, you can logic your way out of fear. But research published in the journal Intelligence found the opposite. People with higher IQs actually reported significantly higher levels of anxiety than average. Why? Because an intelligent brain doesn't just see what is happening, it sees what could happen. It calculates risks, imagines worst-case scenarios, and processes possibilities that a less analytical mind simply wouldn't generate. A highly intelligent person can walk into a social situation and simultaneously think about how they are being perceived, whether they said something wrong earlier, what might go wrong in the next 5 minutes, and 3 different exit strategies just in case. This is not weakness. This is a brain doing exactly what it was built to do. But it comes at an emotional price. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as the curse of intelligence. The same mental machinery that helps you solve complex problems also generates complex fears. Truth number 3. They find it difficult to connect with most people. Not because they are arrogant. This is a common misunderstanding. The real reason is much simpler, and honestly, a little heartbreaking. When your mind naturally processes information at a deeper level, casual conversation can feel genuinely exhausting, not because you think you are better than others, but because your mind keeps searching for depth, meaning, and intellectual engagement that everyday small talk rarely provides. Research from the London School of Economics found that highly intelligent individuals reported lower levels of life satisfaction when they had frequent social interactions. This seems counterintuitive. Social connection is supposed to make us happier. But for someone with a very high IQ, quantity of social interaction is less important than quality. One deep, meaningful conversation feeds their mind far more than 10 surface-level exchanges. This is why many high IQ individuals are often described as quiet, distant, hard to reach. They are not pushing people away. They are simply waiting for a conversation worth having. Truth number 4. They are deeply aware of their own contradictions. Here is something psychology finds consistently fascinating about highly intelligent people. They know they are not always rational. The average person tends to believe they make logical decisions most of the time. Psychological research consistently shows this is an illusion. We are all far more emotional and biased than we think. But here is what is different about a high IQ individual. They are often painfully aware of their own cognitive biases. They notice when they are being irrational. They catch themselves mid-thought and recognize the flaw in their own reasoning. This relates to a concept called metacognition, thinking about your own thinking. And while this self-awareness sounds like an advantage, it creates a strange internal tension. You can clearly see your own contradiction. You can recognize that you are making an emotional decision while knowing the rational choice is different. And sometimes you make the emotional choice anyway. Highly intelligent people are not free from human weakness. They are simply more conscious of it. And that consciousness can be its own kind of burden.
Truth number 5. They are often perfectionists in painful ways. The connection between high IQ and perfectionism is well documented in psychology. But it is not the kind of perfectionism that makes someone organize their desk neatly or color code their notes. It's deeper than that. A highly intelligent person can see the gap between how something is and how it could be with extreme clarity. They set internal standards that most people would never even think to set. And when reality falls short of those standards, the disappointment is genuine and sharp. This applies to their own work, their relationships, their personal growth, and even their understanding of themselves. Many high IQ individuals spend years working on something, convinced it is not yet ready, convinced it could be better. A writer who rewrites the same chapter 40 times. A thinker who never publishes their ideas because they are still refining them. Psychologists link this to a high need for cognitive closure, combined with an impossibly detailed internal model of what perfection looks like. The tragedy is that this perfectionism can become paralysis. The very intelligence that allows them to imagine something extraordinary can also prevent them from releasing anything at all.
Truth number 6. Solitude is not loneliness for them, it is fuel. We live in a culture that treats solitude as a problem to be solved. If someone is spending a lot of time alone, we assume they must be lonely, isolated, or struggling socially. For most people with extremely high IQ, this assumption is simply wrong. Solitude is where their mind comes alive. It is in quiet, uninterrupted time that they process complex ideas, make unexpected connections, and feel most genuinely like themselves. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for deep thinking, reflection, and complex reasoning, functions best without constant social input competing for its attention. Research consistently shows that introverted, solitude-seeking individuals score higher on measures of creative problem-solving and abstract thinking. The quiet is not empty for them, it is full. It is where the real thinking happens. This is why many of the world's most intellectually significant contributions came from people who were described as withdrawn, solitary, difficult to know. They were not absent from life. They were fully present, inside their own minds. Truth number 7. They question everything, including themselves. Highly intelligent people are rarely at peace with simple answers. When most people receive an explanation that sounds reasonable, they accept it and move on. The brain is efficient. It wants closure. It wants to file information away and free up mental resources for other things. A high IQ brain resists this process. It keeps asking the next question. It looks for the assumption hidden inside the answer. It wonders who benefits from a particular belief being accepted as true. It examines the foundation beneath the foundation. This is what psychologists call epistemic curiosity, a deep, almost compulsive drive to understand not just what is true, but why we believe things are true in the first place. And crucially, this questioning does not stop at the external world. People with very high IQ apply it to themselves. Am I being honest about why I made that decision? Is this belief I hold actually mine, or did I absorb it from somewhere without examining it? Do I actually know what I think I know? This internal questioning creates people who are intellectually honest in a way that is rare, but it also creates people who are rarely certain, rarely settled, rarely fully at rest.
Truth number 8. They often feel like they don't belong anywhere. This is perhaps the most quietly painful aspect of extremely high intelligence, and it is one that psychology has documented consistently. When your mind processes the world at a significantly different level than most people around you, there is a genuine experience of not quite fitting. Not fitting into casual social groups because the conversation feels too surface level. Not fitting into academic spaces because the rigid structure feels too limiting. Not fitting into professional environments because the politics and inefficiency of institutions feels deeply frustrating. Psychologists who work with gifted individuals describe this as existential isolation. Not physical loneliness, but a sense that the particular way your mind works is fundamentally uncommon, and that finding others who truly understand how you think is genuinely rare. This experience often begins in childhood. A child who thinks differently, asks different questions, and engages with ideas in ways their peers do not yet understand. And it can follow a person across their entire life. The most fascinating part is that this feeling of not belonging often coexists with a deep desire for connection. High IQ individuals are not indifferent to relationships. They want deep, meaningful connection more than most people. They simply find it harder to find. Truth number 9. They can see solutions clearly, but struggle to explain them. Here is something that confuses people about interacting with someone with a very high IQ. You ask them a complex question, they seem to understand the answer immediately, but when they try to explain it, the explanation becomes complicated, layered, and sometimes impossible for others to follow. This is not a communication failure. It is a gap between processing and translation. A highly intelligent brain often grasps the answer through intuitive pattern recognition. It arrives at the conclusion before the logical steps are fully formed, and then, when asked to explain, it has to reverse engineer its own thinking, to take an insight that arrived whole and break it down into linear steps that others can follow. This gap is real, documented in cognitive science, and genuinely frustrating for everyone involved. It is also why many exceptionally intelligent people are surprisingly poor teachers, not because they don't understand the subject, but because they genuinely struggle to remember what it felt like not to understand it. The knowledge seems so obvious to them that they cannot easily reconstruct the learning journey for someone else.
Truth number 10. They search for meaning more intensely than almost anyone. This is where psychology and philosophy meet. People with extremely high IQ are statistically more likely to experience what existential psychologists call the confrontation with existence, a direct, unavoidable reckoning with questions of purpose, meaning, and the nature of human life. Why does any of this matter? What is the point of achievement if everything is temporary? How do I live in a way that is genuinely meaningful and not just socially approved? These are not questions that haunt everyone equally. Many people move through life without these questions ever becoming urgent. They find meaning through routine, relationship, and tradition without needing to examine those sources too deeply. But a brain that is built to question, to analyze, and to see beneath the surface cannot easily accept inherited answers to the deepest questions. It needs to understand. It needs to build its own framework. And that process of building is often lonely, often long, and often never truly finished. Final thought. Here is what psychology ultimately tells us about people with extremely high IQ. Their greatest strength and their greatest difficulty are the same thing. A mind that never stops. A mind that sees deeply, questions constantly, and searches endlessly for meaning and connection. These are not people who have escaped the struggles of being human. In many ways, they feel those struggles more acutely than most,
but they also experience the world in a way that is genuinely rare, with a depth of perception, a hunger for understanding, and a quiet intensity that most people will never fully see. And perhaps that is exactly what makes them so endlessly fascinating to study.